Okay, let's talk about dates. How much more do we have to do? We have to do dates, extracting date properties, type conversions. We did a little of that. We converted a string to a number before, like this. And then something entirely new called variable scope and formatting data, setting up numerical data formats, and going to our projects. Okay, so let's talk about dates. So we can do this. We can have dim the date, or any name here, variable name, dim variable name as date, dim variable name as date. So just like we had as integer, or as double, or whatever, as long, and so on, we can also have as date. So, okay, that's fine. Then how do we set a value to it? Well, normally we had, like, if it was a string, we needed to have quotation marks around it. If it was a number, we didn't have anything around it. If it's a date, you have to have, in Visual Basic, you have to have these check marks around it. Okay, and it has to be like this also. So let's take a look. A variable of the date type, or date data type, holds a date value. The time date pair, a time date pair stored as a 64-bit, so that's 8 bytes, integer. So that's how it's stored, remember, not what it represents. Okay, so it's translated into what it represents by the computer. Okay, anyway, each increment represents 100 nanoseconds, or 10 to the negative 7th seconds of elapsed time. So range of values. This is the range of values for the date, and for the time it goes from here to here. And variables of type date are declared in the normal way. So just like this. However, when assigning a value to a date, it must be enclosed in the check marks, or the pound signs. And it has to be in this format. So it has to be month, day, year, hour, minute, second, and AM or PM. That's the TTS AM or PM. When converting a date to a string, so you might want to convert a date to a string. So if you want to display the date, he says, or print it, by default, the date and time portions are rendered according to the local settings on your computer. And of course, you may need to apply the format function to format. So we'll see maybe that again. So extracting date properties. So remember that we said in the last screen, 2 screens before, we said that strings are like, have properties, and they also have functions associated with them. So we had a string, it had a length property, and it had a function substring. So dates, if you assign a variable to be a date, it will have some properties associated with it. So let's say that, suppose you define my date to be a date variable. In other words, you do this, you say dim my date as date. And maybe you assign it this property, or I'm sorry, this value, whatever. Okay, but anyway, my date as date. So then you can, once you've done that and you've assigned it a value, like this value, for example, you might assign it this value. So once you've assigned it a value, then you can say mydate.month, you can say mydate.year, you can say mydate.day, sorry, mydate.year, as well as .hour, .minute, .second. So for example, if we assigned my date here instead of the date, my date as date, and we assigned this, and I wrote mydate.month, I wrote mydate.month, what's the month here? May. So if I wrote mydate.month, it should be equal to May. I forget if it's equal to May or if it's equal to 5. If I write my date day, it's going to be equal to 31. If I write my date year, it would be equal to 2007, and so on. Same thing with hour, minute, and second. Okay, so that's what we're going to say about dates right now. Okay, next we'll do type conversion, so I'll do that next.